For years, Atlus has been looking for its third pillar, a series that could stand alongside Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. It seems they had that third pillar all along. They just needed to give it some proper time to develop into the great game that it would become. Metaphor ReFantazio is a bold new IP that brings fresh ideas to the fantasy setting, story, and world while hitting on classic turn-based RPG formulas done by Atlus games in the past. The combination makes for a memorable game on its own and a great start to a new series if Atlus does as I believe they will and invests in making it so. In 2016, after completing Persona 5, Katsura Hashino wanted to embark on a new development adventure. To this goal, a new studio was created, Studio Zero, and their first game was announced as Project ReFantazio. Alongside Persona character artist Shigenori Soejima and composer Shoji Meguro, Hashino set out to realize his vision, but while there would be teases over the intervening years, development was slow going. 7 years after the initial announcement of the game's development, Project ReFantazio, now titled Metaphor ReFantazio, was revealed at an Xbox showcase in June of 2023. The game received a demo in September of 2024 covering the prologue plus some extra with save data carrying over to the main game. Finally, the game was released for PC, PS4, PS5, and the Xbox Series on October 11, 2024 to significant critical praise and positive audience reception. The game sold over 1 million copies on its first day, outdoing other big recent Atlus releases like Persona 3 Reload that same year. The game received several awards from the Game Awards as well as from various publications' end of the year awards. Metaphor struck a chord with audiences, with many saying it was worth the long wait. Metaphor ReFantazio is set in the United Kingdom of Uchronia, a diverse land united under the rule of King Hythlodius V. But after the king's assassination, chaos and turmoil surrounds the land as powerful groups vie for the succession. With the king's only child cursed and presumed dead, and the land being savaged by attacks from hideous beasts called humans, it appears the kingdom and world may be headed towards a vicious civil war. However, the king bestowed one last gift upon his people, using his powerful king's magic, and presented an alternative option, a contest for the throne to be decided by the will of the people. Whomsoever manages to draw the most popular support by a certain date will be declared king. It is a race eligible to all tribes from all walks of life, but the powerful groups of the land, such as the church and military, have a built-in advantage. So will this really change anything? This is the tale in which our protagonist, default name Will, finds himself thrust into. In order to save the cursed prince, Will and his companion, a fairy named Gallica, travel to the capital. This mission turns into so much more as Will gains an incredible power not seen in ages, enters the tournament for the throne, and meets companions from the various tribes along the way. Will their efforts be enough to save the prince and the nation itself from the machinations of the already rich and powerful? And what will they discover about the world and nation along the way? The world and characters are where Metaphor ReFantazio shines when it comes to storytelling. I love the way the elements and details of the world are weaved into the narrative. We don't discover all the answers immediately and have to work our way through finding out about the differences between the various tribes through talking to people and observing our surroundings. I also love how the game does not just go for the generic fantasy races we've all seen before. The creativity in the world building helps Metaphor stand out and gives them a lot to work with if Metaphor turns into a series, as I expect. All that world building though would be wasted if we did not have lovable and intriguing characters to go on this journey with, and the cast is stellar. This group feels like a set of friends brought together by mutual goals and ideals who grow to also care for each other as people and help to solve personal problems alongside their world-shattering, bigger picture ones. They're allowed to be goofy at times, even while they have serious moments and goals. No one in the cast feels left behind or neglected, and that's a wonder to see in an RPG. One of the big benefits to this cast though is something I rarely highlight in games, and that is an amazing set of antagonists. The main antagonist is one of the best I've seen in recent games, and I'm not someone who usually cares too much about the villains of a story. From top to bottom, the character writing is very good, and that's what kept me going along with the fantastic world we found ourselves in. Metaphor ReFantazio has a calendar system where you are set a particular task that you need to complete by a certain date. That task is usually a prelude to the big event that will happen on that final day, so you are free to complete it whenever during that stretch and you'll be set. So long as you don't feel so lazy you sleep through the deadline. Frick. The calendar system is not strict at all. I had more than enough time to get done all the side quests, bonding events with your followers, virtue upgrading and traveling that I wanted to do in addition to the main dungeons. Each day has a day and nighttime action that can be completed. The only exception is if you embark on a dungeon expedition for your day action. Then your night action will be eating and relaxing afterwards, so plan your days out accordingly. I think this generosity in the schedule made me slow down and appreciate the scenery and what the game had to offer more, so I enjoyed this style of calendar system. Since I talked about them earlier, let's go into detail about the various things you can do each day that don't involve the main story. There are of course the obligatory side quests, which can range from simply fetching an item to bigger quests that may involve traveling around the land nearby your current home base. After that, you can spend some time bonding with your various followers. You have bonds with all of your party members along with a select few non-party members. These bonds offer you chances to hear more of the history of the land, details of the lives of the people, and you gain some material rewards and new abilities from doing so. For instance, get Hulkenberg's bond level high enough and she will protect the protagonist from attacks that would have given the enemies an additional attack. There are a lot of strong abilities that will help you in the long run if you invest the effort into your allies' troubles. These are also necessary for continuing to improve the archetypes you use in battle, but I'll talk more about those later on. Sometimes you may not be able to proceed in a bond though until your divine virtues are high enough. You can improve said divine virtues through various activities in the local community. Speak with members of the persecuted Mustari clan to gain greater tolerance, bungee jump off a cliff to gain courage, and make political speeches to gain eloquence. All critical virtues to bond with your friends/followers, and I guess also help your chances of being king if that kind of thing matters to you. If you find yourself low on money, you can of course sell some stuff, but one of the best ways to gain money is to collect bounties. Slay a monster terrorizing the area and you shall be rewarded handsomely, and then you can get those weapons, armor, and items you were eyeing earlier. The way you get around this vibrant world is in a gauntlet runner. Pretty much land ships powered by modified monster parts to cover vast distances in relatively short times. Other rival candidates may have their own gauntlet runners, but yours is clearly superior according to the expert. What? Since many locations are not an afternoon jaunt away, you'll need to figure out what to do with your time in between. This is a chance to engage in certain activities exclusive to the Gauntlet Runner, but you can also increase bonds with party members during these trips if certain circumstances line up accordingly. Like with the towns, there are chances to upgrade your virtues as well, usually by participating in events with party members. I enjoyed these scenes as it gave us another new view into how the characters behaved and what they prioritized in their own downtime. You can cook, do laundry, take a bath, clean the Gauntlet Runner, plant something, read a book, or if you really can't find anything else to do, take a nap. There are plenty of options on the Gauntlet Runner, and then you may have your trip interrupted by an attack or a stop to take in some of the spectacular scenery. Those scenes of the party admiring the scenery are some of my favorites. Metaphor is very good at balancing the more lighthearted road trip moments with the serious main plot. Then you may have arrived at your destination, which in most cases would be a dungeon, and you can explore around the area doing the standard dungeon exploring routine of finding treasure, discovering secret shortcuts, and solving puzzles. You will also encounter enemies. You can initiate battle in action form as you attack and dodge until the enemy is broken. You gain an advantage to start battle by doing so, although you risk being attacked in return and being set on the back foot. Also, if you are 3 or more levels higher than the enemy you are attacking, you can defeat them from this action combat form and gain some experience and money for doing so. Your protagonist's archetype matters in this mode as it changes how you attack enemies in the overworld and also bonuses you get from doing so. Early on, the mage archetype is vital as it allows you to recover MP for defeating enemies in this mode. I like the action part of the hybrid combat mode, but I do wish that you were able to complete encounters with enemies closer to your level in this mode, and that the controls were smoother. There were times when I got hit by enemies because the responsiveness of the controls weren't there for me to successfully get out of the way. I'd love it if future Metaphor games took cues from Trails Through Daybreak to figure out a smoother action combat system. Now that you've initiated combat though, it's time for turn-based battle, and this is where Atlus is at its best and most comfortable. You have one action per party member that you have currently in the party, and you can get a single refresh of said actions if you hit an enemy's weakness, get a critical hit, or pass your turn off to the next ally. Be careful though, because your enemies have the same chances to gain extra turns by hitting your weaknesses or getting critical hits. Thankfully, they can't pass their turns. Each party member has a set of MP that they will use for various abilities. These range from magical attacks across the elements of fire, ice, wind, electric, light, and dark, to physical attacks with 3 types of damage: strike, pierce, and slash. These are the types of damage your party and the enemies can be weak to. Then you have abilities that heal, boost, or weaken. If you have played an Atlus game before, this combat system will likely feel very similar to what you have experienced in Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, or Soul Hackers. There are still some interesting wrinkles to the formula though, such as positioning, as there is a front row and back row for your characters. The front row takes more damage but deals more melee damage, whereas the back row takes less damage but deals less melee damage. This doesn't affect magical skills though, so that's likely where your mage/mage adjacent characters will go. I wish this distinction was used even more than it was, because although initially I thought otherwise, positioning allies usually doesn't prevent enemies from using their multiple target attacks from hitting you. I wish the game had you choose rows to attack, which would add another dynamic to the strategy of battle. That's up there with the enemy soul scream ability that gives them extra turns usually found on boss enemies among my complaints about the system. On the complement side of things, it is so much fun to play with this system, to plan out turns and have satisfying combinations of attacks, buffs, and debuffs. Add in the ability to restart the battle with the press of a button, and I found most encounters a blast, even at their most tense and difficult. Putting aside said bosses with their cheating extra turns, Atlus knows how to make compelling turn-based combat systems, and while Metaphor doesn't innovate significantly on the formula, that's fine when the system is in such a good place to begin with. I've touched a couple times on the archetypes, which pretty much function as your character's classes, and this is one of the most important systems in the game to engage with. Each character can equip one archetype at a time, and that can be any archetype that your party has unlocked. This starts with the basic archetypes such as mage, warrior, thief, and the like, and as you level up said archetypes, you gain new skills and eventually a higher archetype once you have mastered its predecessor. Although there are some times where you need a certain level of mastery in multiple archetypes to progress, the game is always very clear about how you get to the next level. This progression is also where your follower ranks come back into focus, as you need to bond with particular followers to advance their archetype further. For example, Maria is your follower that unlocks the healer archetype. That gets you the initial healer class, but to move on to the next rank in that class line, you'll need to increase Maria's follower rank with you to a certain point. This is the case for many of the archetypes and helps tie in the social aspects with the combat of the game. By increasing follower ranks, you'll also get certain other bonuses, such as being able to inherit more skills for that archetype. As you will likely be pursuing multiple archetypes with the same character, you can use the currency mag to inherit a certain number of abilities from one archetype to another. I loved playing around with this system and finding some incredible combinations. There were some skills I found early on for characters that I always had in their inherited skills because they were that useful. Finally, the archetypes also determine what synthesis you can perform in battle. The synthesis skills are special abilities that cost multiple turns plus MP from all characters performing the ability, but they can be absolutely devastating to your foes or life-saving for you, so using them properly is going to really help you out in the long run. As with many other Atlus titles, Metaphor ReFantazio has a stellar visual presentation with a distinctive style that sets it apart from all other games. In the Persona games, they chose a particular color and stick with that as the theme for the UI. For Metaphor, they chose a combination of green and pink/red that works a lot better than I would generally expect that combination to work. Each of the major locations we get to explore around are a lot of fun to observe, the way they built the architecture in the world. I do wish they'd gone a little bolder in that area, it is fantasy after all, but they made up for it in other ways. The character designs are major standouts, with all of them having a distinct sense of fashion and difference in style according to their position, personality, and race. The various characters of all races have a lot of personality behind them, and distinctions between people of the same race. They're not all dressed the same, and that is such good additional world building. The enemies and gauntlet runners also have strong characteristics designed to make them stand out, and I'm glad for the enemies in particular, even if some of them are rather disturbing. One of the things that the great visual design actually distracts from is the moments when the lower budget for Metaphor shows, such as with the towers in the game all having the same layout and design, more still frames for important moments, and cutscenes that don't have as much action as one might expect. For me, these were the occasional reminders of Metaphor's status as a new IP that couldn't afford the same level of budget of Persona titles, but I was impressed at how deftly the team handled the design so it barely registers at times. Musically, the game has a good soundtrack, as one would expect from Shoji Meguro's work. The choice of having the chanting in Esperanto over several tracks was inspired. It lends the music a sense of weight that further escalates the stakes of whatever situation you're finding yourself in. The vocal performances from the cast are also very good. Choosing a mix of US and UK based actors helped reinforce the idea that the kingdom was made up of very disparate groups. And I'll give special shoutouts to Alejandra Reynoso as Gallica and Joseph Tweedle as Luis. Their performances in particular were amazing. As is typical with the works of Atlus, the UI is both very clear and artistically rich, and the UX, apart from the action combat, is smooth and responsive with clear information presentation and controls. I think Metaphor ReFantazio looks, sounds, and feels great to play, and I think that's just the beginning for the new Studio Zero. Metaphor ReFantazio is both a great game in its own right, and one of the most exciting games I've played recently because of its potential to become something even bigger and better. In conversation, I compared it to the Xenoblade games in that I could see Metaphor being turned into a series on the same level of quality if Atlus and Studio Zero are willing to invest the time and money to make it so. For now, we can enjoy the game as is, with its fantastic fantasy world, charming cast of characters, terrific turn-based battles, and pretty presentation. These are the kinds of games you always hope to see come out of studios, and Atlus was on a roll for all of 2024. Let's hope they can continue it for 2025. Now, I did promise those who tuned in for my Game of the Year video that I would share where Metaphor would have landed if it had been eligible, since I hadn't completed the game yet. Metaphor would have been among my honorable mentions, not unseating my Game of the Year, but very close and a worthy title for those who wish to play it. Thank you all for watching the video. Leave it a like so we can continue to spread the good word of Metaphor and also my channel. Comment below your thoughts on the game and subscribe to keep up for future videos of mine. I hope to see you in the next one. Have a great day and happy gaming.